Welcome to the Level Up Artist Podcast. We're your hosts, Adriana M.A. and
Jackie Sanders. We are two art professionals sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our creative journeys.
we talk to artists, leaders, and art professionals to demystify the creative process and discover new ways to succeed as a career-minded artist.
If you find value in these conversations, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you will be notified when we drop a new episode every Tuesday.
So on today's episode, we're diving into a topic that could be a major roadblock, and I know it's been a major roadblock for a lot of artists, and that is the artist comparison trap. I feel like we've all been there with social media and the digital world basically encouraging some constant comparisons. I mean, you can't help it. You just see it. You're going through the feed, you're seeing everybody else's stuff. So it can be a little too easy sometimes to lose sight of our own artistic journey. So that's kind of what we want to talk about today.
Yeah, we're going to start with talking about how you can recognize if you're stuck in one of those comparison traps. We're going to talk about the importance of finding your own artistic truth, your own artistic voice, as well as setting your own benchmarks for success in order to stop comparing yourself to others, and really focusing on looking inward as often as possible to grow as an artist, because ultimately that is what will set you apart from comparing yourself to others. So before we get started, let's go ahead and lay the foundation. So Adriana, how can creatives recognize that they are in a comparison trap with other artists that they see?
So I feel like, I mean, obviously a little self-awareness, you might be like, am I not? But sometimes it's hard when you're in the thick of it to know if you are in it or not. So here are a few things to kind of think about. That comparison can often rob us of joy. It can make us feel a little bit insecure or blocked. So it's kind of important to be aware of some of the indicators to just help us like actively move away from negative thought patterns. This is by no means a comprehensive list. This is just a few that we're going to highlight. Um, but if you're feeling any of these, this might be a good sign of like, uh-oh, I'm either falling into it or I'm in the middle of it. So I feel like one of the more obvious ones can be like feeling a lack of joy in the art making process. If the act of creating new art isn't bringing you joy anymore, um, you're just like, I don't know, there's like some like level of distraction with it. It might be because you're too focused on comparing yourself to others and letting some of that, negative thoughts and voices come in into your head. Um, Literally like I mean, why do we do art, right? Part of it has to be like the process of the making of the thing itself. So that's one thing. If you're like, I really don't feel like doing it, that may be one indicator. I feel like another really solid one, and we've talked about this one on separate episodes, how to get out of it, but could be a symptom of the comparison trap would be the artist block. It's constantly measuring yourself against others, where it gets to the point where it stifles your creativity, and your ability to express yourself freely. I mean, suddenly you're just like, it's not just a lack of joy in the process. Now it's even worse. Now you don't even want to start like at all. So that definitely can be another indicator.
Yeah. And another thing I think of when I think of the comparison is how you relate to other artists in your community or others that you see on social media. A sign for me, if I've felt that, is if you start feeling almost like resentment for other people's success or accomplishments, which again, all of these come with the layer of doing that self-reflection on yourself, whether we can do that with family members, we can do that with old friends, but especially creatively, if someone, let's say, gets into an exhibition that you also applied to and you didn't get in, but they did. Or if they share a big business win that they hit that maybe is a similar milestone that you've been working for. If you start having those resentment feelings or, oh, how did they get that and I didn't get this, or they don't deserve it, you have to acknowledge that, okay, where's that feeling really coming from? Why am I
Hmm.
feeling that way? And why do I feel the need to have to be on the same path that they are or hitting the same milestones at the same time they are? Um, so if you start making other people's accomplishments something where you feel bad about yourself, that can be a level and a sign that you may be comparing yourself that you need to unpack. Because ultimately, that's just kind of the fourth one, an insecurity. It's your insecurity showing through, which obviously undermines the confidence of your own journey. Which I think would be the best second piece of advice is really embracing your own artistic journey, and being able to stay confident and like solid in that vision. Because once you have your own creative vision, yes, you can look at other people's journey, hopefully celebrate those successes, but you understand that, well, their journey is theirs and mine is mine. It helps
Mm-hmm.
you get out of that comparison trap and shift your focus more inward to embrace, okay, I'm excited for what they're doing, but also this is my path, this is what I'm doing, and I'm solid in this individual journey that I'm doing. Because this allows you to really embrace your voice, understand that you can never be exactly like someone else. There's always multiple variables, multiple factors, whether it's how long you've been practicing as an artist, other financial constraints that you or they may be under, other social and emotional support that you may have or they may have. There's so many variables to why all of our lives in general as humans are different from one another. So it's impossible to truly compare one journey to another. And really leaning into your artistic voice can be helpful in another way too, because it helps you really avoid those distractions. Because ultimately, comparing yourself to other artists, it really just is a distraction. Yes, it can be helpful for gaining inspiration or momentum or seeing what's possible as success as an artist, which is amazing, having that community over competition mindset. But if you start seeing it as competition and start seeing it as a negative distraction for you, that will derail the path that you are on, which is not helpful.
No, not at all. And it's like we all learn in some way or another, like even the old masters, by imitating others. Like that is normal, but by kind of like embracing your own artistic truth, so to speak, like Jackie was mentioning, that's where you can kind of shift it a little bit and be like, okay, I got what I needed. I added the tools to the toolbox, the inspiration, some of the prompts that I needed. But now I got to look at my own stuff, right? Like, what am I really about? What am I interested in? One of the things that helps, like, again, as you're navigating, trying to get out of this, is like thinking of that idea that you're not alone. Many artists face struggles, even if they don't share publicly. I mean, most definitely, I feel like most people don't share it publicly. Makes sense why, we get it. But also, your path is your own, right? What you share, what you don't share, like that, like those are all decisions that you make. But if you're like getting stuck into that moment of like, I can't get past this, like I'm not good enough, whatever, you're not alone. At some point or another, I feel like everybody, like every artist goes through this in some way or another, but you can get out of it and you can surpass it and you can be more resilient and, cultivate grit, if you will. And then kind of move past it. So another thing that's going to help you through this process is keeping the mindset that you have to stay true to yourself, right? I know it sounds like one of those cheesy posters that goes in an office somewhere, to thy own self be true, as it goes. But I mean, literally the seed of the idea in this is that you have to keep finding and refining your own truth, right? Especially as it comes to your own creative inputs, your creative outputs, and let that guide your work rather than trying to follow somebody else's lead. Like, what actually inspires you? Are you trying to make that flower painting to look like this other person's flower painting because your own idea for flower painting is not there yet? Or like, I mean, you have to put in the time to make it your own, to make your own iteration of it. So you have to stay true to you. And if it is that you're in that stage where you are doing a little bit of mimicking in order to learn before you develop your own style, that's fine. Just recognize that and then move on.
Mhm.
Don't try to like, oh, this feels like it's me, but it looks like exactly somebody else's. It's like, no, this is like a learning step of the process, but you have to put in the work to get to the next stage. So, um, With this also comes the idea of defining your own success metrics. If you've ever heard our podcast before, you know we're a big fan of talking about like how everybody defines their success, especially, when we have guests and everybody's different. And one of the best ways to step away from that unhealthy comparison is to take the time to define your own parameters for success. For some people, success is to have their art make enough money that they can go on a shopping spree at the art store, or to be able to afford a nice meal, with a loved one, like, or to be able to make art every day. Like for everybody is different, and chasing what someone else's apparent goals are, because again, what you see online and what the reality is isn't necessarily the same. But trying to follow somebody else's apparent goals can often lead to frustration, and it can like undermine some of the things that would define you personally. So one of the things that can help you with this is you need to create your own benchmarks. You need to bulletize this, put it on a napkin, put it on a spreadsheet, whatever works for you, honestly. But you need to define what success looks like for you, whether it's creating with joy, improving a technique, sharing your art more widely. Maybe you have, which this one's popular, you have some financial goals that you need to tie to that thing, or some social media goals you want to tie with that thing. It's okay to have different ones. I would definitely say don't just pick one. Like if you're like, well, my only goal is to have 1 million followers on fill in the blank social media, I'm like, that's too narrow. Like pick a few different things. Another one is forgetting like moving targets, right? Comparing yourself to others means constantly chasing and shifting goals that may be very unreachable. So you need to have your own benchmarks that can give you like stability and satisfaction, and that you feel maybe are a little bit farther than what you think you can reach, but they're still within reasonable. If you have 1,000 followers on social media, following an artist that has 1 million and saying, I can be like them someday, you have a giant gap, like that you need to get through before you're anywhere near that. So perhaps saying, okay, I have 1,000 followers before the end of the year. Again, if this is an important metric to you, it doesn't have to be. You could say, okay, my next stage is 2,000 or 5,000. Now I have 1,000, but I want to be like this person that has 1 million, like pick some in between goals that are a lot more reachable, even if your eyes are on the goal. And yes, you do want to get to that 1 million. Again, this is just an example, of course, but you need some in between steps, and that will definitely help reduce some of the frustration that can come with trying to chase somebody else's, again, apparent version of success, because behind the scenes you don't know what their real success metrics are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that really is the key, is making sure that how you define success is personal to you, which
Hmm.
again, for if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably listened to hopefully one or two of our guest episodes. If not, definitely check them out. But that's why we find it so important to ask all of our guests, like, how do they define success as an artist? Because it is different for everyone. Everyone has different benchmarkers for success. As you were mentioning, Adriana, it could be financial, it could be community relationships, it could be furthering a cause that you're passionate about. You could have benchmarkers for marketing content of I want to, yeah, hit a certain number of followers, or more more tangibly, I want to make X number of posts per week. I want to send out one newsletter every week or every month, or whatever it is that you have control over of hitting a benchmark. But also things like measuring kind of the joy and excitement in your art making process. That can be a huge level of success. How well is the work that I'm making aligning with my story, with messages I want to convey out in the world? And we have other episodes about goal setting, or all of our guest episodes that explain defining success that you can go back and check out. But really figuring out, not just for any one of those, but really for all of them, it's kind of a hybrid combination of finance, relationship, marketing, content, art making, of all of these categories culminates into how each of us have benchmarkers for our business. And yeah, just because someone is sharing about this huge win on social media, that doesn't mean that that was necessarily even a fulfilling goal of theirs. So they may actually still feel like they're missing the mark, which is really where that comparison trap spiral effect goes in of everyone posting kind of their perfect version of their lives when in reality it's, well, what were your benchmarkers for success and how did you hit them? It's the behind the scenes that no one really talks about as openly, obviously working to combat that. But it's a good thing to remember and keep in mind.
Yeah.
But up next, we're going to talk about looking inward and really leaning into our community for support. But first, let's take a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by our Level Up Artist courses.
We understand that life as a modern artist can be both exciting and overwhelming. Plus, there's a lot of information out there. So, what do visual artists actually need?
We've spent countless hours of trial and error, weeding through tons of information to find the gold, so you don't have to waste your time going down those endless rabbit holes.
In addition to weekly calls, we have created video course modules to cover everything from artist documents to exhibition prep, social media to technology, sales strategies, artist mindset, PDF resources, templates, and so much more.
Ready to get started? Head on over to levelupartists.com to learn more, get immediate access, and level up your career today.
Welcome back, everybody. So another point, in this topic about the comparison trap that we want to talk about is that idea of looking inward for true growth, right? So we've talked about a little bit about identifying it, your own success metrics and things like that. But I feel like something that some folks forget about a lot is with all this input, that we're getting constantly, all this bombardment, especially online, sometimes it's hard to take that time to say like, okay, that's great. That's all things that coming in for, through my eyeballs, but I actually need to sit with myself, right? I need to kind of look inside. I want to compare my own work to other things I've done in the past. I need to take time to reflect how far I've come. That can be a much more valuable experience and it can remind you of your growth and maybe even reignite your passion and maybe even I think that's one of the things we've talked about, like, removing creative blocks, like look at some of your past work because when you see and you are able to celebrate your own progress, honestly, I feel like that's a lot more important. You can look back at older works. Yes, some of them may be a little, kind of give you a little hesitation and be like, I wasn't there yet. And that is okay. Please give yourself some grace, especially if you're looking at artwork from 10 years ago. It's been a while. But like be able to recognize, okay, are there through lines in what I did then that still connect to my work today? Does it still resonate? Or was that just a learning step, as I was learning a new technique or trying to find my voice? And that is okay. The other thing that looking inward and looking into the past can help you with is to rediscover gems from that time where sometimes looking at some of your earlier work, you may find elements of playfulness or spontaneity, things that may inspire new directions today. Like, ooh, I like the way that I used the spatula at that time. I haven't used a palette knife in a while. Like maybe I need to bring that back, or I like the way the texture was or the transparency. Like try to find those things that you're like, maybe they're no longer in your work, but they still spark something for you. And being able to go, oh, I don't remember why why this got left behind as my work progressed, but I definitely want to bring this back, right? And I don't know, like that can definitely spark some new things when you do that. So please give yourself the chance to do that at some point.
Yeah, and I love that idea of really reconnecting with the wonder and awe and the attraction that all of us had to the creative process too. Like way back when, whether as a kid, as a young adult, wherever in your creative journey, you felt like you really made that pivot point into seeing the value of the creative process, reconnecting with that energy of why do I enjoy making art? What does it give me? How does it energize me? And leaning into that even more by reconnecting with that idea, that emotion, that mental headspace that you were in. Because I do think that also helps with focusing inward rather than externally. So focusing on internal reflection over that external comparison, which of course all of us logically know. And we're like, yeah, no, duh. But it can be one of the hardest things to do, and trying to stay conscious of that. So really turning inward for motivation rather than seeking that external validation. Like definitely share your wins so other people can celebrate with you, but taking the celebration just as seriously as every other step in your creative journey. And I think that's where community really comes into it too. As we wrap up this conversation, focusing on really the power of community, and that, yes, it can be that luring trap of comparing yourself to other artists, but really leaning into the mindset shift of, rather than seeing them as competition, it's really that community success that lifts everyone up. That rising tides rises all ships, and that rather than comparing yourself to other people, rather than being discouraged by other people's achievements, you can start being inspired by them. So definitely encourage all of our listeners, if you are not already, try to join some kind of supportive community, whether an online forum, whether even just people that you follow on Instagram that you are inspired by in your physical art community, maybe going to local meetups, or it could be fellow artists that are in a group exhibition with you. Really leaning into energizing the local community and giving back to them by celebrating other people's wins, by going out of your way to hype up other artists, because that's ultimately what makes each of us feel good in the end, is celebrating the wins of others, having that positive mindset. And also then when it is your time to be celebrated, when you hit a milestone, they'll be there to celebrate you too. So it's definitely one of those rising tides lifts all ships mindset that can be really, really pivotal with getting out of the negative comparison game.
Yeah. Plus, a lot of times, like when you share your struggles, your wins, not only do you create, by being a little bit more vulnerable, you create those deeper, more meaningful connections with other people, but it also is a great reminder that everyone faces similar challenges, because a lot of times people will reciprocate. And a lot of times, if you're like, I'm feeling this way, I don't know, like this person got in, but I didn't. And honestly, like I feel great for them, I celebrate them, but it stings a little. And then maybe you can find like those folks that will help you unpack and be like, okay, so let's look at your application, and maybe we can look at how can we make it stronger next time, or the piece that was submitted. Maybe it wasn't even the piece itself. Maybe it was like, oh yeah, I know one of the curators and the theme was X, and your piece didn't fit and it had nothing to do with your artwork. But like sometimes those kind of insights don't come if you're siloed in your own world and don't talk to other artists. So like definitely it's good to talk to the others. Again, celebrate the others and like try to make those connections, because a lot of times you get info you didn't even know was available out there. Also it's that thought, and you've heard us, if you've heard any of our podcasts, we say this a lot. It's about collaboration, not competition. That's why you hear us say community over competition all the way, all the way. This is not one big pie. And if you didn't get a piece, like you're out, like who gets the biggest? That's not what this is about, right? This is like you get to look for opportunities to collaborate with other artists. You can do joint projects, maybe, do exhibitions together, whether you put them together or you get, like accepted at the same time. You get to share ideas, that that idea of collaboration and removing that, oh well, I got it, you didn't get it, you got it, I didn't get it, like that's not helpful at all. Instead of being like, let's collaborate, like that can foster creativity. It reduces the need for comparison. It turns into, well, I didn't get it this year, maybe next year I'll get it, right? Like, how can we help each other out is a lot more fruitful than being like, well, they didn't value what I did because like they obviously can't see I'm talented. Like, and I'm not gonna talk to anybody else because they're a bunch of losers and they didn't get in, or whatever. Like that, none of that is helpful. That's just toxic. So instead it's just like, okay, I didn't get it. It's okay to be bummed about it. But again, in talking to others, it can be like, okay, how can I make it better for next time? Or they didn't get in too. Let's go have a drink, like, or let's just go eat a snack or something. Let's go get some ice cream, as our way too processed that we did not get into that exhibition we all really wanted to get into and have a laugh and have some fun, instead of just being, bummed out. Nobody likes people that are just bummed out.
Exactly. And so really by focusing on lifting others up and celebrating those wins, sharing in the challenges, finding friendship along the journey, it can really help minimize that comparison and create an environment where comparison isn't what's holding you back. It's actually allowing those moments where you may have felt negativity to inspire you to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, it's a way it can help you change that mindset. And being part of a supportive community, again, reminds us everybody's journey is different. There's those 10-year overnight successes we've all heard about, but it's only in having those conversations that you're like, oh, this thing's popular now, but this person's been doing it for 15, 20 years. Like, it's just because I just started hearing about it and learning from their journey. They learn from our journey. Like, it's a give or take. Success is not a zero-sum game. After all, it's a moving target. And as we go through our careers, our definitions of success evolve too. Our metrics also change. The things we prioritize change. So it's okay. Instead of being like hyper focused on this, like, I can't get out of this little spiral hole of comparison, it's like, don't even walk anywhere near that hole. Like, just don't. Like, just walk past it. But if you get sucked in, rely on your community to help you get out. So thank you so much, everybody. I hope this was helpful. And, community over competition, everybody. Let's do it. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
As always, our blog will be linked in today's show notes, where you can find episode notes and links to all of our other podcast episodes.
And if you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share your feedback, or have a question you would like for us to share on social media, I'm at May Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Sanders Studio on all platforms. And if you want to follow the podcast, we're at Level Up Artists on Instagram.
You can also visit levelupartist.com to get immediate access to template, resources, and more to level up your creative career today.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.